Welcome to part 4 of our Angels and Demons series, and this time we're going to talk about ghosts. First question off with ghosts is, why do we think they make that weird sound?
Woo!
What did that come from? I mean, have you ever heard that sound in your life? Has anyone you ever known heard it? It sounds like a coyote, but warbling. Mm-hmm. Like, I can imagine, like...
Of course, you come up with, like, the actual sound definition of the warbling.
Yeah, so...
I mean, when you have, like, wind passing through certain tunnels, you get a similar sound.
Yeah.
That's true. Okay, so are there ghosts? That's the question. According to the Bible and anything else that we choose to talk about, are there ghosts? This is a very popular thing. People believe that there are ghosts. And the general thing that people believe is that they are humans, spirits of the deceased that have died and not passed on to the next life, whatever that means. It doesn't matter what they believe the next life is, whether that's just disappearing forever or heaven or hell. It doesn't matter. People believe that ghosts are the spirits of the deceased. So,
well, and this, I mean, let's face it, this can be refuted biblically pretty easily. I mean, I just read it 2 seconds ago. We were off camera. There's one verse in Hebrews that says we are destined to die once and then be judged. Period.
Okay. Yeah, that does.
Right.
But it doesn't mean that... I have seen that to say that there's no ghosts. One, I don't think there are ghosts. I don't think they're a real thing. But two, I don't know that that verse distinctly proves it, because it says that they die once. Okay, you die and then you become a ghost, and then you don't die again. You just kind of pass into the next life after whatever is resolved.
There's like that classic image we see in movies all the time where, like, you die and then an angel comes and brings your soul to heaven. Like, that could be argued as a time you're a ghost. Not that that's anything biblical.
No, but people believe that ghosts are people that haunt.
Right.
You know, that hang around a certain area or around a certain person, and they do things. Whether they're good ghosts, which people think that there are, and whether it's a bad ghost that's doing negative things to you.
Right.
Yeah. Do we want to, like, where did this even come from? Because in my mind, being raised Catholic, I think purgatory, right? There's this after death period, and again, I guess this is biblical, that there is a second death. There is essentially this in between, but it's anyway. But there's the doctrine of purgatory that comes, you know, where you're going to go this place where you're going to wait. If you didn't get things right in this world, that you have an opportunity to go work it off essentially in purgatory. That it comes from the apocryphal writings. It's nowhere outside of that, so it's actually Tobit. So I'd say no, but is that where the idea? It's like where did even the idea of ghosts begin? I mean, how did it even start? That assuming supernatural activities, things that we just can't explain, are ghosts.
Yeah. Well, I think that the answer that we're going to get to, and why it's in our Angels and Demons series, is I think that it comes from demons. I think
our guest wants to say something.
Yeah, I was just going to say... if you just talk about...
I don't even have anything to say. Just go ahead and say what you say.
If you look back in the Bible, it talks about spiritualists and necromancers existing. And necromancers is just basically the same word as spiritualist. The old version of it, it's not zombies, it's talking to the dead.
Talking to the dead. Yeah, it's not... The modern day thing you think of necromancer is someone that raises zombies from the dead and controls.
You think of it
I've never
from
heard
like
it called necromancer, but
whatever.
Necro.
Yes.
I don't know. Necro is probably more accurate because it.
Yes, it is.
But it comes from like D&D and like Lord of the Rings and stuff like that. But the original meaning just meant talking to the dead. And we actually see, I think it was King Saul, right, that went to a spiritualist.
Medium,
the medium, and brought back essentially a ghost of the prophet Samuel.
Yes, except she didn't really.
No, she did not bring.
And this is the thing. I believe that this is what people who are talking to the dead are actually talking to when you do, a Ouija board and different things like that, that are tools to talk to the dead. You're actually talking to a demon. that is going to, if they're like get amazed and they give information and they do these different things, and it's really you're talking to a demon. Of course, demons know things. Of course, they can pretend to be a past life. They can pretend to be a soldier from the Civil War that has, deep information about that time period.
Yeah, because
and of course
the demons were alive.
They were there. But going back to that medium, what's her reaction?
Well, she was surprised.
She was surprised
that it actually worked.
She didn't it say that she was terrified or screamed or
because it directly said that God brought Samuel there. It wasn't her that brought him.
Yeah, this is not the right. Let me do an accurate translation here.
Your computer's being tasked. It's like about to take off.
I know, you can hear it taking off. Keep going and I'll find.
Well, so what I'm I firmly believe that any likening of ghosts or apparitions or supernatural existences and things, where you see, like the paranormal activity in the movies, or you see the videos on YouTube and stuff that appear to be undoctored, but, something just moves across the table by itself. Okay, well, we know that Hollywood can make just about anything happen. But let's assume it's not fake if it is something real. Well, demons cannot inhabit inanimate objects, but can they act upon them? Of course they can. Could a demon technically throw my phone across the table? I don't see why not. I don't know why they would, but
I mean, there's nowhere like in the Bible that it says a demon does anything like that. Right. But who knows?
Could they?
Yeah, I mean, there's also like things that just happen in nature that people attribute to science fiction. I remember seeing this something about how every once in a while, like something weird happens with magnetic forces and ions and stuff in the air, and it creates like an electric ball that looks like a ghost, and if you touch it, you die. And so if somebody saw that and they watched somebody go and touch it and die, of course you'd be like, oh, clearly that is an evil ghost that's murdering my family. What else would you think?
I don't know. I mean, if I saw that, I would still be like, "What?" Yeah, well, I'd Google it first.
Yeah, you'd Google it, and it's a thing. It's it's.
But they didn't have the ability to find out. Like if they didn't know someone that knew what happened, which they didn't have the scientific ability to find out.
And how would you know?
Then you would absolutely think that it's some sort of spiritual thing.
And this goes down the same path of what atheists and agnostics will say against Christians or anybody religious really, is that, well, prior to science, you guys attributed, viral infections to demon possession. Okay, well, absolutely. Sure, they did.
Yeah.
But now that we know better, it doesn't rule out demon possession. It just means we just know that there's viral infections. They're different.
And can't demons just use the viral infection? I mean, they'd probably know who has the virus and where to get it.
And so we talk about like mediums and psychics, right? And like Ouija boards and things like that. I think, like you said in the last episode, it's very plausible that demons and the devil himself would take things like a Ouija board or something and say, "Oh, it's just a game. It's no big deal. It's not real," and then use and manipulate that.
In the kids' games section at stores now. And not even just like I don't know, not even in the adult section. It's literally in the kids'
they make it more fun too. Like they have a Stranger Themed version of a Ouija board where you're doing it on the lights.
Really?
Yeah, from their house. Yeah.
I know that there was a couple years ago that I was invited to a Halloween party, and somebody said, "Yeah, it's gonna be really cool. We have tarot card readers, and we're gonna have this Ouija board, and I've had this person come and we paid. They're gonna do a seance." And I was like, "Yeah, not coming." And they're like, "Why?" I was like, "Seriously? Why?" I was like, "Because I believe that stuff is real. You're literally unlocking and opening the door for demonic forces to just walk right in and do whatever they want."
Yeah.
Oh, it's just silliness. But okay, then what's the point of the seance? You're gonna talk to the dead, and you think that's less silly than me saying demons? Really? To me, a lot of people who say ghosts or afterlife spirits and things like that, it's demons is less nonsensical than those things.
Okay, so
biblically, demons are real.
So first, I want to read the passage of the medium. All right, so it says.
Where are you at in the Bible? I don't know. You're in 2 Samuel?
I am in 1 Samuel 28.
Okay.
So it says, all right, so Saul comes to the woman, and she says, "Whom shall I bring up for you?" Because Saul wants to get some answers. And he answered, "Bring up Samuel for me." When the woman saw Samuel, she cried out with a loud voice. Okay? And you might think, okay, well, she's just yelling or whatever. No, she's super scared because the woman said to Saul, "Why have you deceived me? You are Saul." And the king said to her, "Have no fear. What do you see?" So she's like freaking out about this whole incident, and she knows she's gotten like mixed up in something that she doesn't want. She didn't intend to get mixed up. And then she says, I see a divine being coming up out of the ground. He said, "What is his appearance?" And she said, "An old man is coming up. He is wrapped in a robe." So Saul knew it was Samuel, and he bowed with his face to the ground. Okay, so let's talk about, and this brings up the biblical thing of what happens when we die. Now, specifically, in the Old Testament, I think it's a little bit more unclear if we're talking about currently what happens. But in Old Testament, it's very clear what happens when you die. You go to Sheol. You go to the grave. And in the grave, if you take the parable that Jesus gave us as evidence, there was two sides to the grave, paradise or Abraham's bosom, and then torment. And so there's a good side and a bad side, and depending if you followed God's laws, if you did sacrifices, if you trusted in Him, you went to paradise.
And just to be clear, so everybody knows what we're talking about, the Greek word for Sheol is Hades,
Which
so
means the grave.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're both the same thing. Hades and Sheol. One is the Greek word, and one is the Hebrew word, and they both mean the grave. And so we know that's what happens in the Bible.
Every once in a while in the Old Testament, it does refer to Sheol specifically as the bad side because it warns about Sheol.
But I think a Hebrew speaker or a Jew would tell you that in their interpretation, Sheol does not equal hell like we say it is.
Yeah, no.
It's not the same thing.
No. Which is unfortunate. Why in the Bible you'll see the word hell, especially in the New Testament, and it's like 5 or 6 different words, and lots of times, I mean, if you really study it, it's usually referring to 3 different places. Yeah. So it's really unfortunate that they put the word hell as like this all-encompassing thing. I mean, there's even one time when
where Sheol, Hades, hell, the lake of fire, torment, those have all like merged into the same thing.
I know.
And they're really not.
And it would be so much clearer if they just put the original word there.
Yeah.
So that we could associate it. Well, that's this place. I mean, what's the one place where Peter mentions only one time in the Bible where these the demons are being held prisoner?
Oh,
the pit or whatever.
The pit of despair or something like that. I forget. Yeah,
I forget what the exact word is.
I don't remember either.
But it's used one time, and then they translate it as hell and group it in with these other things, and it's just it's frustrating that you have to wade through that in a translation.
Well, and we know that Hades and hell are 2 different places, or Sheol and hell, because it actually says that Hades will be dumped into hell. Yeah. So it can't be, you can't dump something into itself, so it has to be a different location.
Yeah.
Okay, so back to ghosts.
Back to ghosts. So according to the Bible, what happens when you die? Do you become a ghost? No. You go to a certain place. Can you get back from that place?
Well,
no.
This is
unless you're Samuel, and God brings you back to reprimand Saul.
There's also when Jesus died. When he died, a bunch of people that believed in him came back. Did they come back as zombies, or did they come back as ghosts? Were they in their body, or did they just walk around for a day and then go back? It's not exactly clear on what happens, but they did get up.
But they did come out of the grave.
Yes, they came out of the grave. So that's just another instance.
And people have been raised from the dead.
Yeah.
Both in the Old Testament and the New Testament, there have been multiple times where people were raised from the dead. So we know that God can bring someone back from the grave.
Right.
But do they hang around as ghosts? No. It's not a biblical thing. It's not a biblical idea.
A theology. This falls in the realm of folk theology. Right? These are where you take stories from different cultures and different accounts of things, and you start to blend them all together. And what I'm talking about is like, Eastern mysticism, Christianity, Islam, Judaism, and then you go into like the Mayan faith and the all these different, and you start to blend these stories together. And this started happening from the stuff that I've read is after humans started traveling the world. You'd go to a different culture and you'd hear a story over here and go, oh, well, that sounds like the story that I know from these people. And then you start telling, and people just start blending these things together.
Oh,
and that essentially is folk theology. Which
is why God was so adamant about people not marrying into these other cultures, because what would they do immediately when they did that? They would bring their religion in, they would mix it up with Judaism, and then they'd come out with this thing where they didn't really even believe in God anymore.
Yeah. Right. And we see it all the time with Christianity. When was brought to certain parts of the world, it would, create something that mixed their culture with Christianity.
Well, we even see it in the biblical Jews. We have the Pharisees, the Sadducees, and the Essenes, and the Qumran, the people of Qumran. Some people say that they could have been a branch of the Essenes, which people don't know a whole lot about. And that they were obviously Jews, but they were a different sect of Jews, and they were a different way. And it's like humanity has done a really good job of that since we've existed.
I mean, the big ones that kind of have crept into the U.S. is New Age.
Oh yes,
has really crept into Christianity, and to the point where it's difficult to separate it sometimes in certain contexts, and that's that's unfortunate.
What I don't understand is where the idea of this, and maybe you guys could, maybe we talk about it, it'll make more sense. But the idea that we see in Hollywood and through other people that once we're dead, that some people have unfinished business in this world that we have to hang around and finish, whether it's with other people we know or loved ones. I don't even understand that. It's like, I mean, I guess when you die, there could have been something you didn't do before you died that you needed to get done, but I don't know. I to me, I think that elevates mankind to the level of God, and that we have somehow, He is not in control of our time.
I think that even if we, we don't take into, even if we say that not all ghosts and stuff come from demons, or at least the origin of ghosts, I think it's just a great story. I mean, when you're sitting around and a fire, and someone wants to say something, tell a story. Well, what's the most interesting ones? Well, the unexplained ones, the ones that have mystical elements, and that's been a tradition that has been going on since the beginning of humanity. And so ghosts are interesting to talk about. I mean, what is more interesting than something? We still tell ghost stories.
Well, I like zombie lore. I mean, it's
a very similar thing.
Yeah, right, it's. I mean, there's a reason that we've been talking about, and you guys have been talking about angels and demons for so long. Like the stuff that we don't know, and the stuff that like we can see some evidence of, but not really. Like that's interesting to us.
So let's just ask this: Is there any evidence of ghosts in the Bible?
Well, I mean, so there's one example that, depending on the translations, if you put them together, it's in Mark's Gospel, of the guy who hung around the tombs and was possessed. This is Legion, right? So the guy lived in the tombs, and it can be interpreted as he lived in a graveyard, and that people thought, they couldn't chain him down anymore. He had, superhuman strength, and I think from our perspective, biblical Christianity, we say, well, yeah, if the guy was possessed by over 1,000 demons, he probably had a few funny things going on the outside, and so there was that one that could have been. And some people have said that he haunted the tombs or he haunted the graveyard, and that was he spiritual, was he physical? And I say, well, no. If you just read the account, he was physical. He was a human being. He wasn't a ghost. Could he have done things that would have appeared ghostly or supernatural? Well, the guy was possessed
haunting,
by Legion.
I mean, I can haunt Jimmy John's and just hang out outside. I'll haunt it.
Creepily.
Yeah, it says free smells, guys. They're inviting me to haunt
to
it.
people and smell people. That'll get you shot in the state. Anyway, I don't know. I think that anything that we, the spirit, supernatural, medium, psychic, seance, all that. I think that in realm is entirely demonic. I think it is demons taking advantage of our fears, our superstitions, stories that have been told through time that they were present for when they were told. They know the story that happened. They know what the truth of what happened and how they can manipulate it. I mean, that's all they seek to do. Demons, the devil, seek to destroy, lie, manipulate, steal. That's that's their entire intent.
I completely agree. Yeah, I mean, if you talk about any of that stuff, communicating with the dead, seeing the future, you're anything to do with something that's out of your control that affects your life, that you're communicating with, I think that it's all demons.
Well,
I think that you're just
if you
inviting.
look at like Google these days, well, how could demons see the future? They've been around for a long time. Humans are pretty predictable. I mean, the Google and Facebook have algorithms that could essentially predict the future of our behavior.
Yeah,
they know what we're going to do.
They have more info than you.
Oh yeah,
and
and they have information that you don't assume that they would have because they can communicate with each other. There's a decent number of them because we know that there's half as many as there are angels, and God has a lot of angels.
You know how demons communicate.
We know
they
that
still have Blackberries.
But like
so we know that that demons do different things. It'll say a spirit of whatever, and for example, if you go and you watch Darren Brown's videos, okay, on YouTube, and you just go and see some of the stuff, he's a mentalist and a magician, and he does amazing things, and some things that are just beyond believing, and he'll show you how he does some of these things. He doesn't reveal all of his tricks, but if you take that, and he's just a man. I mean, he's 40 years old, or however old he is, and then you take a demon that is specifically talented or even made for a certain thing, and you give them thousands of years of experience, you don't think that they'll be able to do things that you can't
with
even
a human or
understand?
a few groups of humans and say, hey, let me show you something. I'm going to train you how to do this.
Yeah, I mean,
fantastic.
Well, and they can alter things. Like, they have power in this world. If you wanted to do great in the stocks and you sell your soul to a demon or whatever, and it tells you what stock to do it in, not only can it probably predict the stock market pretty well, but it could go and possess things, manipulate things, and make what its prediction is happen. Because they are around.
Again, I know this is probably one of the most offensive things I'll ever say on the show, is that if we look at I think a lot of the things when we talk about these supernatural things, because I've studied Mormon doctrine enough, it brings you right back to Mormonism, and these are a lot of things. And you mentioned New Age, that Mormonism and New Age in this country ascribe to. That these are a lot of things that, if you look at the angel Moroni referring to and being referred to as an angel of light, the angel of light is Satan. I mean, that's demons manifest as angels of light.
Himself as it specifically says that in the Bible. He disguises himself as the angel of light.
Yeah,
and I mean, again,
and it also refers to demons being able to do that same thing.
And I think if you are Satan or a demon, what better ploy than to say, I'm going to create and manipulate things that get so close to the gospel that I'm going to get 90% of it right. Why? They have it memorized. They know it just as well as anybody else. I'm going to get really close to it and manipulate it just enough that it will turn them away from God forever. They'll think they're worshiping, they'll think they're doing this, but they're not. And again, I think, you look at psychics and mediums, I think these are spiritual gifts that for some reason, or maybe they're just innate, I don't know, that are being used for non-godly purposes, anti-Christ purposes. That perhaps somebody has a gift of prophecy that they manifest in a different way that they can. I don't know. I mean, I'm speculating right now, but this is.
But the real point is, ghosts are not a thing.
No.
Spirits of humans roaming the earth, doing things, is not real. Demons are real, guys.
Oh, yes.
And so anything to do with you think you're communicating with a ghost, you're not. Because it's not a real thing. Demons are.
And if you think you're communicating with the dead, okay, you don't think there was a few days, like you said, demons can communicate. Maybe like, hey, does anybody know this guy? He's looking for this guy who died. Oh, yeah, I was there when he died. Tell him this.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm getting kind of silly, but why is that not?
But we know that demons can be generational and follow families. So you don't think you knew your dad?
Right.
You don't think he knew your grandfather?
He's been hanging around with your family for 100 years.
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
it's anyway.
Not
Anyway.
necessarily that like everybody has a demon that
Right,
is
good point,
following
good
them.
point.
We don't know how many demons there are, but
There's a lot.
there's a lot, and so there might not be one that's just for you, but
And I want to end
Who
this
knows?
on the good news. The good news is, and we can go back to the story in Mark or Luke, when Jesus cast out Legion himself, this demon or groups of demons or multi-personality, whatever it was, immediately recognized Christ for who he was. Immediately knew he was God. Immediately was afraid of him, and knew that Jesus had all the power in the world. And when Legion asks to be cast into the pigs, this is something outside of the norm, because it says, and I have it open right here in front of me, where'd it go? In Mark 5:13, so he gave them permission. Jesus gave them permission to break the norm, right? And why? Because he's God. He has that ability to say, yes, you guys are so afraid of me. Sure, go ahead and possess the pigs. I don't care. So I think the good news of this entire thing is can demons be frightening seances? Yeah, I think they are frightening, and I think dabbling in demonic stuff is terrifying. The good news is if you surrender to Christ and you give your life to Christ, those things cannot harm you.
I mean, we've already talked about in our first one about demons that if you have the Holy Spirit living in you,
you're good.
How can a demon come against the Holy Spirit? It's
They couldn't even go into pigs without permission.
no, they so don't do Ouija boards and seances.
Don't ask a demon questions. I mean, because they'll answer them. Probably not in a good way, though.
And they exist to lie, cheat, steal, manipulate.
But you don't have to worry about them possessing you or anything, because if you have the Holy Spirit. But ask the Holy Spirit your questions, not the demons. It's much better at answering them.
So as always, thanks for commenting, liking, and subscribing. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time, guys.